Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How's it going?
Going okay. How you doing, sir?
All right, doing okay. Thanks. So, looks like the cold weather's behind us for a while, at least around here. So that's all right with me. All right. Give it a couple more minutes here and see who shows up. Um, Lisa, are you familiar with emotional intelligence? Is that something you're aware of?
Yes.
It's a subject. Tell me what you think about it.
Emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Just being aware of how you feel and the way you process things and everything.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent definition. This is probably sexist, but I feel like guys are most often not aware of how they're feeling, and if they're in a leadership role, and they're making demands or orders or however you want to put it, but they don't know exactly how they feel, that can really change the way the communication is perceived or received by the person getting it. So I think that connecting the awareness of how you're feeling with what you're trying to accomplish can make you a much more effective leader, in my view. So
I
thanks
100%
for
agree.
that. Who is iPhone? I don't know who iPhone is. I don't recognize that name.
Mhm.
All right. It's a silent iPhone. All right. Hey, Branson, how are you today?
I'm good, sir. How about yourself?
Good. What's your take on emotional intelligence?
Um, I from the other classes I was in, I've taken a lot from it in dealing with my clients now. Um,
Oh, good.
so it makes me deal with them a little bit different in how I perceive to give them the product. Um,
Oh,
so
good. Well, that's a positive. Hey, Kaim, how are you?
Oh, doing well this morning. Doing well. A little less adventureful than yesterday.
Oh, did you have an adventuresome day yesterday?
Yeah. Well, my day kind of got turned upside down when the plumber decided he was going to show up about 9:30 to replace our hot water heater, and then that turned into a fiasco. A day full of fiasco. But
Oh,
by
no,
mid-afternoon, he finally got. Yeah. Well, hey, sometimes these things happen, but you got to have hot water. So.
yeah, yeah, I think so. Hey, Samara. Okay, I don't know how you add your name either, but just so I know who iPhone is, I have a number of iPhones that join this meeting, and I'm always curious who it is. So there you go. I don't
That
know
was
if I.
me yesterday, cutting in and out.
Okay, let me see if I can rename or anything. Yeah, I can. So I can rename it on my end, and I can put in Samara, and that's good. And now instead of saying iPhone, it says Samara. So there you go. Okay, so Tom, just to tell you real quick, I'm giving a talk to North Carolina Department of Agriculture meeting on Friday, and one of the things I'm going to talk about is live streaming e-commerce. So I was just looking through some of the replays from Pop Shop Live, and I think I might use the one where you're dressed in a peanut suit because I think that will get the attention of the group. So
You're welcome to help yourself.
thank you. I think it's I don't know. I think the peanut suit says it all personally, but anyway, I want to let you know you'll people talking about you. So there you go. All right. So today we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. Um, and those of you who've been in the class before know this is really one of the best sections. I think you'll get a lot out of it. And so I'm going to go ahead and start instead of blabbing. So let's try this here. Share screen. Okay, and we'll share this. Okay. You would think after 2 years of doing this, I would figure it out, but no. Okay, let's start this one over.
What we're talking about today is emotional intelligence, or EQ, and the role it plays in your success as a founder. Research suggests that EQ may be twice or even 4 times as important as intelligence in your success. The definition of EQ is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, and recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of everyone around you. As a leader, you want to manage what you say and what you do. You've got to know what you're feeling, because your thoughts are driving your feelings and your actions. The majority of people don't know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and don't know how their words and their behavior affect other people. So the fact is, there's a lot happening in our brains that we don't know. Fear can be a great driver. The most powerful leaders are those who acknowledge and embrace their fear and then turn it into an asset. Good morning, everybody. I'm Anna. I'm the managing director of Techstars LA, and I'm also an executive coach. And what we're talking about today is emotional intelligence, or EQ, and the role it plays in your success as a founder. EQ, which is sometimes referred to as emotional intelligence, emotional quotient, I'm going to use those two interchangeably, is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, and recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of everyone around you. So research suggests that EQ may be twice or even 4 times as important as intelligence, or IQ, as hard skills in your success. In the startup community, and in particular in the tech world, we place like an inordinate value on hard skills and kind of what you know and where you went to school and what your role is. But the fact is that soft skills are probably harder to train and even more important in your overall success than the hard skills. But they're difficult to pin down and identify and find ways to develop. So that's what we're going to focus on today, is actually identifying what those soft skills are and then how you can build them. I actually do believe that emotional intelligence is something that you can practice. I also believe that we're never actually done practicing, so we're constantly, working on it. Let's look at some different tools. What we're going to cover in this is self-awareness, first of all, which is the cornerstone of everything. You can't work on it until you're aware of it. How to be present, how to use presence to pay attention to what's happening around you, how to recognize and manage fear, what flexible thinking is and how to use it as a tool to grow your company. Then we're going to take these skills and we're going to apply them where all the problems show up, which is other people. Because, we don't have problems. We only have problems in relation to other people. So we're going to look at feedback, how to get it, how to give it, and why this is important, and then spend a little time talking about coaching and how to coach yourself and how to coach your team around you to help them grow. I believe that personal growth drives company growth. So the more you can develop these skills and the more you can be a great coach for your team, the more effective and productive you're all going to be. So what exactly is EQ? The definition of EQ is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions, and recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others. In practical terms, this means being aware that emotions drive behavior and impact people both positively and negatively. And learning how to manage them, both ourselves and others, is key, especially when we're under pressure, as we often are. So we can look at EQ in 4 quadrants. And this was developed by Daniel Goleman and based on a lot of psychology research at the university level. So first we've got self-awareness, which is really where it all begins. This is the ability to understand your own strengths and weaknesses, to understand what your core values are. What do you care about? What really drives you? You'd be amazed how few people actually know what it is that motivates them. What's your why? And then what are the things that set you off? What are your triggers that get you into the emotional part of your brain so that you can't think as clearly? Being self-aware means understanding all of this. Then we move to self-management, which includes being able to stay calm and positive in a crisis and being able to recognize and detach from feelings rather than letting them drive your behavior. Good self-management allows us to focus under pressure and be adaptable, to be in a state of continuous improvement and to set high goals and reach for them. So now that we've got ourselves kind of all under control, we move to social awareness, which starts with empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of someone else. This applies both with your team, but also with your customers. The next level of social awareness is being able to read a room. So when you walk in, you can understand the dynamics and you can see how people are relating to each other, which is going to help you communicate better. It doesn't take a huge leap to understand how this is going to help you sell more and also help you raise money. Then in the last quadrant, we have like the ninja level EQ skills, the social skills, which includes everything from being able to give and accept feedback well, to being able to build and inspire trust, to use your understanding of someone else's perspective to influence them, and then the ability to be an inspiring leader, which is something that we all want. Many investors, myself included, ask questions around EQ before making an investment. So the core thing I look at when I'm looking at a CEO, is this someone that I would work for? Is this someone that I believe that I could follow as a leader? And that really goes directly to EQ. What I'm saying is this a person with high EQ who I believe has the ability to be an inspirational leader? So that's pretty deep, because you may walk into a pitch meeting and think, wow, what they care about is how good is my idea and how good's my plan and how good my slides are, when the person sitting across the table from you is really looking at, is this someone I could follow? So making an investment in EQ and really thinking about it is going to just make you, such a more impactful leader and make those meetings go so much better. I think EQ is it's like a little bit like good taste. Like everyone thinks they have it. Everyone thinks they have good taste. Like everyone thinks they have high EQ, but like that can't really possibly be true, right? So in practical terms, the truth is, for good or bad, that all of this stuff is related. There is no such thing as a decision that is devoid of feeling. As a leader, you want to manage what you say and what you do. You've got to know what you're feeling, because your thoughts are driving your feelings and your actions. Your feelings are determining your thoughts and what you do. And believe it or not, your actions, what you do, actually influences your thoughts and your feelings. So the idea that you could kind of take emotion out of the equation, as some of us would like to do, and just be completely data-driven, it's just absolutely not realistic. Ignoring your feelings in all of this is just never going to work. So we have to understand how the three things work together. What we're really trying to do when we build EQ is get our two brains to work together. We have our feeling brain, which is wired unconsciously to keep us safe. And a lot of the actions we take are driven by impulses that are just really deep and that we may not even fully understand. So as a leader, you want to become fluent in EQ so you can use all these tools to build better teams, to build better companies, to have a greater impact on your customers and everyone around you. And there's like a huge additional bonus from understanding and investing in EQ, which is that your friends and family and probably even your dog are going to like you better.
I'm in favor of my dog liking me less. Okay.
So let's dive right into self-awareness. How many people think that they have high self-awareness? I'm expecting everyone's hands to go on. Come on. Okay. According to Harvard Business Review, 95% of us report having high self-awareness, but actually only 10 to 15% do. So that means the majority of people don't know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and don't know, how their words and their behavior affect other people. Like, wow, that feels like a really big problem to me. So if you're the majority of people who think you're self-aware but actually aren't, like that's a massive problem for not only you, but for your company, because especially at the beginning, you are your company. So let's look at, a really, really extreme example of someone who's not self-aware. And I just like to stop and note that, I think a lot of us have become aware that we're not self-aware recently, because there's a lot of people that have taken these unconscious bias tests online. We all think, oh, I don't have unconscious bias. I'm completely not biased against anyone. And then we take the unconscious bias test and it shows that we are. So the fact is, there's a lot happening in our brains that we don't know. But let's look at an extreme example here. So, someone who's not self-aware cannot accept feedback, don't know what they're good at, don't know what they're bad at, don't know what triggers them, so aren't able to identify when they get into an emotionally triggered state. They might actually have an inflated sense of their own performance. tend to take credit for, does anyone know anyone like this? Tend to take credit for other people's achievements and blame others when things don't work out. And finally, they may even like hurt other people without realizing it. You know, I'm sure we've all worked for someone who isn't self-aware. And it's an incredibly painful thing when you're, especially when you're in a reporting position with someone who lacks self-awareness. It's just almost unbearable. So now let's look at someone who has high self-awareness. Someone with high self-awareness understands what they're feeling and why. They know their own strengths and weaknesses. They know what drives them and what they care about and what their values are, which, by the way, also informs the company's values and helps them bring in people that share those values. Because they know who they are, they can present themselves with confidence, but also humility, and then make better decisions quickly and even in uncertain situations. So early on in life, like this might not matter so much. You know, we've all seen people who lack self-awareness who are high achievers in school. So when you're in school, you know, the rules are clear, the guardrails are clear. You know what you need to do to get an A in this class or that class. The teachers aren't really looking for self-awareness. They're looking for, you know, material that you've handed in on a test. It's very transactional. When you get out into the real world, right, and in particular when we're trying to build companies, you know, and how you affect other people, your ability to like inspire people to come follow you and work for you, your ability to convince people to buy your product, all of those skills that relate to EQ become so much more important. And that's when the difference between people that have high self-awareness and those that don't really starts to ramp up. So we're going to go over a quick way to get started building your own self-awareness. So the first step is getting a baseline, like what do you know about yourself? So this is a pretty easy exercise. You're going to write down four lists of 5 things each. When asked to describe ourselves, like we normally focus on the external stuff, kind of back to the hard skills. So we talk, you know, who are you as a person? You might think, oh, well, I went to this school and, you know, this is my job title and this is where I grew up and these are the things I know about. We tend to talk about things that are external, but what I'm talking about is our inner self, not our external self, which is a lot harder sometimes for us to identify. So you're going to write down your strengths, improvement areas, your core values, and the things that trigger you. Once you've got your list, you don't want to like necessarily post it on your social media, but you might want to like share it with someone that knows you really well and get their reaction. Like what is on your list that they didn't expect and what is missing from your list that they think should be there. And that can be really informative. So I'd like to just spend a minute on personality assessments because sometimes when people think self-awareness, they think, oh, I should go take the Myers-Briggs or I should take the DISC or the Enneagram or the Strengths Finder. I've taken all of these, by the way. So I think they're really useful, but they're kind of just one piece. An assessment on its own doesn't create self-awareness. It's just a tool in kind of pointing out blind spots, things you don't know about yourself, or just giving you just kind of another perspective or a set of vocabulary to talk about, who you are. So to illustrate this, I will throw up some of my results and talk about how these sort of inform or relate to my own self-awareness and self-assessment. So think about these things as preferences or tendencies rather than fixed qualities. And that's really, really helpful because then it sort of gets you out of this idea of this is how I am to this is what I prefer, right? This is what I prefer. And then I can kind of correct for that. So I prefer extroversion, right? Which means maybe sometimes I actually need to build my inner introvert up. I am very high level, strategic. That's what strategic, intuitive is, so I like to stay on the top and think in frameworks, right? So sometimes I can need to spend a little more time like working on the details and building up from the bottom. Judging, dominance, input, activator. I have a super strong preference for making decisions. I like to be in charge, right? That also means on the flip side, I have trouble with followership. In any event, these can be very useful. They are one piece of the puzzle, but they're kind of not the beginning and the end. So here's what it looked like when I did this full exercise on kind of strengths and growth and values and triggers. It's a little scary for me to put this up here because I'm like, wow, I'm telling you an awful lot about myself. But, self-awareness and opening that door is a little scary. It's like, what if I discover I'm not perfect, right? So guess what? You're not. None of us are. But the more you get to know yourself, there's real power here. There's real learning and growth. And the better you're going to be in every area of your life. So we can think about all this information about yourself in kind of 4 different boxes. So the first one is your open self, the things that are known to you that are known to others. And then you have the hidden self, which is it about you, but maybe other people don't know, right? So with a hidden self, what you want to actually try to do is make that box as small as possible. The more you reveal and share about yourself, the better your communication and your relationships are going to be, and the more you can learn. So there's a lot, it's scary to divulge things that maybe feel private to you, just about how you are and what you care about. But the more you do that, the better your connections are going to get. Okay, so let's talk about the unknown for a minute. I don't really get this. I'm like, how can there be something about me that I don't know and no one else knows? It's kind of like if a tree falls in the forest, like, does it really, no one hears it, does it exist? I don't know. But the one to really focus on, though, is the blind spots. So the blind spots is stuff about you that's obvious to everyone else that you don't know, right? And this is the really scary one. So the more you can open the lid to that box and look in it and get the things that are over there into the open self and out into the open and expand that green box, the better everything is going to be for you. And the more you're going to be able to connect with people in an authentic way. So now we're going to talk about presence, which is really the cornerstone of self-management. So there's physically being in the room, like we're all here, but we have various degrees of sort of actual focus and mental presence that we're bringing. So mindful presence is being aware and attuned to where you are and what's happening with your feelings and the feelings of everyone around you. So when we think about mindfulness, everyone thinks meditation. So meditation is amazing. And I highly recommend that everyone do it. But the fact is, meditation is not the only tool that you have in your toolbox to get present. Let's just do a quick exercise. It's called feet on the floor. Just notice that both of your feet are fully connecting through your shoes to the floor. If you're sitting in a chair, feel where the chair is coming into contact with your body. Just close your eyes for a minute and listen to what you hear in the background. Imagine that there's a string that's pulling straight from the top of your head all the way through to the ceiling above you. And as you do that, you'll notice that you'll sit up a little bit straighter and that you'll open up your chest a little bit so you're able to breathe a little bit more. And then just open your eyes and really look at everything that's around you. What color are the walls? Who are you sitting next to? How are you feeling right now? What's going on? Take a deep breath, and then you're back in the room. So I don't know about you, but I just did that myself, and I feel different now, and I feel like now I'm gonna talk slower, and I'm gonna be able to make more eye contact with you, and it took 30 seconds. So if you do that before you start a meeting, especially if it's a meeting that's kind of got a lot of tension and charge, you're just gonna have a much better meeting. There's also a great way to do this with a group. It's called red, yellow, green. And it's a really great way to start a team meeting. You just go around the room and everyone checks in whether they're feeling red, yellow, or green. So green means I'm in the flow. I'm calm, I'm rested, there's nothing bothering me. I'm fully ready to be present and be creative. It's great if everyone's in green. It's usually not the case. Yellow means there might be some anxiety fluttering around the edges. Something's a little off, not quite right. Either I'm distracted about something that's happening at home or I'm bothered by something at work. And so, I might not be 100% here, but I'm 75% here. And then there's red. So if someone checks in red, it means there is something that is really upsetting me and I am in a full emotional high alert state right now. Right? It might be a really big problem at home. It might be something at work. And by the way, you don't have to say, if you're in the red, you don't have to tell people why you're in the red. It might be something that you don't feel comfortable sharing, which is completely fine. But it is really important that your team knows that you're red. Because if you're red, you got to go deal with that. You can't do whatever this meeting is right now. It's just not going to go well. So if you do red, yellow, green, and one of your teammates checks in red, ask them what they need right now. Ask them if they need to leave, ask them if they need to have a conversation about it. So take care of your people first. If you have someone in red, or if you're the one in red, deal with that, and whatever it was that you were going to discuss in the meeting can wait. So there's a bunch of benefits you're going to get if you're fully present. The first one is really simple, just awareness. You're going to notice more of what's happening in the room, including people's body language, and you're going to be able to hear more of what's being said. So you're just going to pick up more of what's going on. That goes along with higher level listening. So you're going to be able to deeply listen and have empathy for the people around you if you're present, which you cannot do if you're distracted or you're checking your phone or you're kind of in and out of the room, right? And it means you're going to get the content. We have so much trouble with communication. It's amazing how often you'll leave a meeting and one person heard one thing and the other person heard something else. And if you're fully present, you reduce the chances of that happening. The third thing is your creative brain is going to be fired up. So you're going to be able to actually engage with whatever is the problem or the thing you're discussing. And by the way, if there's no problem or meaty topic of discussion, and it's just a meeting to report on stuff, you shouldn't be having the meeting. A good meeting is a meeting where there's some creative problem solving that needs to happen. Finally, you're going to have a positive impact on the people around you. Do you know those people that when you meet them and they shake your hand, they make eye contact, and they make you feel like you are the most important person in the world, and you have that jolt of energy that comes into you, those incredibly special people? If you practice presence, you will become one of those people, and you will have that impact on everyone around you, and there is just no greater gift than being that person for someone else. One of the biggest mistakes we make in life is living in the future, so worrying about things that haven't happened yet. So in the startup world, we worry about whether customers are going to like our product, or if we're going to run out of money in 6 months, or what if our competitor gets there first, or some other thing that we have no control of and isn't actually on the table today. The other thing we like to do is live in the past. So, having regret that we didn't make a different move yesterday, or resentment against someone else who didn't do something that they were supposed to do for us that has now created a problem, none of which is on the table today. So the team you have in the room with you today, the product you have today, the angel investor who just committed to being the first person to write you a check to get your product out the door, those are the things that are on the table today. And being present, will help you engage with today's problems using the best faculties you have today. Being present so you can bring your whole self into the room to lead is just going to be key to handling whatever comes your way. Let's talk about fear, because fear is a reality. When you're an entrepreneur, fear is everywhere. I don't believe a great company can be built on fear, but I do believe that a great company, in fact, most great companies, maybe every great company, is built by people that felt fear and worked through it. So what do we feel fear about? So Harvard Business Review actually did a study where they identified 7 specific and repeated buckets of fear that are felt by entrepreneurs. Okay, so the basic one is financial insecurity. It's really risky doing a startup, right? You're not building your 401k. The second one is running out of money, right? The most common fear of entrepreneurs, we're not gonna outlast our cash on hand. We're not gonna be able to make it. We've got 7 weeks, we're running towards a wall. The third one is imposter syndrome. It's the idea that I've tricked people into giving me money. They think I'm someone that I'm not, and I actually can't do it. And I'm gonna get found out. The next one is that the idea is no good. I've convinced people that this really great idea, is going to change the world, and I'm not sure I 100% believe it right now. And then there's the shame or embarrassment factor. What is it going to be like when I have to, tell everyone the company blew up and that I failed? I can't even stomach that feeling of imagining what that's going to be like. Then there's the team. I didn't hire the right people. They're not going to be able to do it. I don't have the right people around me to execute. And finally, the opportunity cost, that big corporate job that you didn't take where you would have been building your 401k, and I'm never going to get it back, and I got myself off the path, and see, now I'm spinning. I am getting upset just talking about this stuff because I have been there, and I was that founder, and I had all of this. It's real and it's no fun. But here's the thing: fear is not all bad. right? I don't want to say that all fear is bad. Fear can be a great driver, right? If you're saying, I got to work hard, I need to figure out my sales channels before I run out of money, or you're going, I got to hit my goal this week because that's what I said I was going to do, like that can be really, really motivating. It can drive progress and learning. But here's the thing, it's incredibly damaging when fear becomes physical. When you experience fear as a physical sensation, it stops you from being able to be effective. You're tense, you know, your heart rate goes up, like your breathing increases, like your blood vessels constrict, right? Your mental focus, you know, becomes insanely sharp. So this is the classic fight or flight response, you know, and that is driven by your amygdala. Your brain is going, what do I need to do to stay safe? So how do you think that is going to affect your ability to make good decisions? So the fact is you cannot build a great team or a company or even have a good day when you're feeling like that. So when you become aware that you're in that feeling, you're having those physical fear sensations, just stop, just slow everything down. Don't make any decisions. You know, you got to address that, you know, back to sort of the idea of being in the red, right? If you've got that level of fear, you're in the red. Go back to your presence tools, go for a walk, get outside, do something physical. You can talk to your team. I personally find that when I say how I'm feeling, it like cuts it in half at least, if not more, right? It's a little bit like, it's not that the fear isn't real. The fear is real and it's rational, but it also reminds me a little bit of like the monster under the bed, you know, and like when mom and dad comes in and like looks under the bed and the monster's not there, like the kid feels better, right? So it's a little bit like that. When you share it, it kind of, fear hates the light of day, you know, so if you're feeling that way, you share it with someone else, it's gonna help you lessen it. If there's no one that you feel like you can really talk to about it, which sometimes happens to CEOs because you don't want to say to your team that you feel afraid because you feel like you need to build confidence. You can always also, you know, by the way, I would encourage you to say it to them anyway, because you're going to be, they're not going to be freaked out. Your team's going to be glad that you shared with them. So if you are a CEO and you are worried about showing your fear and vulnerabilities to your team, like think about it. If you decide to do it, you're going to get a lot of value out of it. But you can also write it down. You know, sometimes just writing things down sucks the power out of them. And, you know, coach yourself. Just ask yourself a simple question. What's the one thing that matters right now? And that can sort of help you get back on track. The point is not to stop feeling fear or to imagine that you're ever going to get to a point that you're not going to feel it, because you will not. By starting a company or, you know, deciding you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've put yourself in a place where you're going to feel more fear probably than even the average person. The point is to recognize when it shifts from working for you to working against you and then to manage it. So I love to say, like, feel the fear and do it anyway. The most powerful leaders are those who acknowledge and embrace their fear and then turn it into an asset. Okay, so this is like my favorite section. We're going to talk about flexible thinking. So you decided to work on this new thing and you had a plan. It was probably like an amazing plan. But as Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. The one thing we know for sure about your plan is that it is wrong. Your plan is wrong, your financial projections are wrong. Whether things turn out great for your company or blows up, it's not going to be what you thought. The fact is, what you know about your business is a tiny fraction of everything that there is to know. So if you know this much about your industry and your business and your competitors and your customers and your company, there's another 95% out there that you don't know. If everything was known, somebody would have already done what you're doing right now. So you made your plan with only 5% of the available information. Of course your plan is wrong. And that does not mean it is a bad plan or that you are not smart. The number one thing that highly intelligent people have in common is that they're wrong a lot. Jeff Bezos said that. So to be an entrepreneur, you have to get great at being wrong. You can call it growth mindset, you can call it learning mindset, but today we're calling it flexible thinking. So what are the elements of flexible thinking? So there's this cliche, strong opinions loosely held. People like to make fun of this on Twitter, but it's a cliche for a reason, and that's because it's really useful. So strong opinions means that you have a point of view and you're moving in a direction, right? You have to do that. If you're not moving in a direction and you haven't made a commitment, you're circling the drain. Loosely held means you're willing to abandon your strong opinions in the face of evidence to the contrary. You are taking a hypothesis-driven approach. You have beliefs about your business, you're moving in a direction, you test your beliefs, you talk to customers, you get data. And if the data shows your hypothesis was wrong, you don't go looking for better data. You say thank you, and you change your plan and you go test the next thing. This involves a total detachment from needing to be right. As an entrepreneur, you have to stand in the mirror practicing saying, I was wrong, I was wrong, I was wrong, I was wrong, over and over and over and over again until it's just as comfortable for you as saying hello. The core skill early in your company is learning. You got to also be comfortable in a state of just not knowing, which, by the way, I hate that, right? I'm a J, like I want to make a decision, like I just want to get there, I want to know. I hate not knowing. But that's really the definition of being a founder, is just being comfortable with the unknown. And then what is going to get you through this, and the key to success, is a commitment to asking continually better questions. The questions that you're trying to answer determine what you're going to be working on, and that is going to determine how quickly you're going to make progress in your business. So what are good questions? Good questions are sometimes called powerful questions because they generate thinking as opposed to generating a simple answer. They can't be answered yes or no, and they may have many different possible answers. A powerful question invites creative thinking and questioning of assumptions. So you might be sitting with your team and saying, who thinks we should start charging our beta customers? That's a question that you could ask. It's not a very powerful question because it's just asking for a yes or no, and it's not prompting a discussion. A better question on that topic would be, what might happen if we start charging our customers? So now imagine the conversation you're going to have if you ask that second question. It's going to put you into a conversation that's going to invite creative thinking. Powerful questions are universal. So you can just have this toolkit of questions and you can just bring them out with you. They apply to lots of situations. When you get really good at flexible thinking, these questions will become second nature to you. You know, like, what's working, right? I love to ask like positive questions rather than negative questions. When you focus on what's not working, it takes your brain into a negative place. But if you ask what's working, you know, one thing to say is what's working and how can we do more of it, right? And that takes you into a positive generative place. Another one that I love to ask is what's at stake here? Because when you name the stakes, you know, behind a decision, it can tell you, you know, how essential is this? And if you're worrying about something where the stakes actually aren't that big, asking what's at stake here can cause you to let that question go and focus somewhere else. So just like we looked at the profile of the person who isn't self-aware and we thought about like how bad it would be to work for that person or with that person, here's another frame on that, which is thinking about being in a fixed thinking mindset or a judgmental mindset versus a flexible thinking mindset. And I want to, like, again, just point out that these are states of being. They're not kind of absolutes. So we all spend time over here in fixed, and we all spend time over here in flexible. So fixed people are feedback avoiders. They've got their story. So you may have been in a meeting or seen someone in a meeting when they're pitching or they're presenting, and they go into it like a fight. What they're trying to do is convince you that their point of view is right. So if someone asks a question, the purpose of answering the question is to knock down the assumptions, right? Whereas if you go into a meeting with a different kind of flexible attitude and someone asks you a question, where you can go is curiosity. Like, oh, what a great question. I hadn't thought about that before. Let me respond and kind of engage with you on the question that you've just asked. It's just a completely different approach. Where do you think fear puts you? Fear puts you over there. Ego, needing to be right, puts you over there. You know, fatigue, being triggered, puts you over there, right? So we all get over there and we need to work to get back over here. And how do you think it affects the rest of your team? It is not surprising that flexible thinkers are much more effective leaders. Flexible thinkers build loyalty, build trust, they're able to show humility, and they engender cooperation and a greater taking of risk by everyone on their team because they create a safe space for that to happen. So we're never going to be there 100%, but the more time we can spend in flexible thinking than fixed thinking, the better everything is going to be. So let's talk about feedback. Who loves to get feedback? I love that. A lot of people that love to get feedback. Unfortunately, feedback has picked a pretty bad rap. If you're getting feedback, a lot of people think it's because you did something wrong. You're broken and I have to fix you by giving you some feedback that's going to make you better. So like in the context of being an entrepreneur and actually just like in the context of life, like we need to flip this on its head. Feedback is a positive. Feedback is learning. Feedback is growth. So when you're getting feedback, you don't have to agree with everything that's being said, but flexible thinkers, like we just saw, are open to feedback and look for the learning opportunity in it. So, one of the reasons why we don't love feedback is because it feels like evaluation, but actually evaluation is only one of the 3 kinds of feedback. And it might be actually the least important, especially in this context. So there are 3 kinds of feedback, and they're appreciation, evaluation, and then coaching. So let's talk about appreciation first. Appreciation is feedback, right? And you should just hand it out. Just give it out like candy. In fact, give it out more than candy. It's better for you than candy. So, when people are doing things around you, that are helpful, like notice them, right? Just show people that you notice them and care. I'm not talking about like the culture of giving everyone a trophy. I'm just talking about the culture of we're all working really hard. Let's take a minute and just thank each other and acknowledge, right? That feels really good. It's not evaluative. It's just saying thank you. You should also be doing evaluation on a regular basis with your team. People should have a defined job description and goals that they need to meet, and you're going to want to check in every once in a while, 3 months or 6 months against those goals and kind of track and see how people are doing. But what I'm talking about now is like the kind of feedback that sort of happens on a daily basis that's just meant for growth. It's not evaluative and it's not pure appreciation, it's coaching and growth feedback. So how do you become great at getting and giving feedback? So one of the ways is you ask for it, right? The best kind of feedback is the kind of feedback that you asked for. What did I do well in that meeting that we just got out of? Like what didn't go so well? Ask someone for feedback right in the moment and then you'll be able to incorporate it right away. But make sure you're ready. So if you're feeling triggered or you're feeling a little upset or off, not a great time to get feedback. When you're getting feedback, practice active listening. So you're not going to argue, you're not going to speak. Don't question the content, question for understanding. So remember that it's hard to give feedback. So like have some empathy for the person who you've asked for the feedback, because that's a difficult place for them to be. And remember also, this is an exchange. So it's not like you've asked me for feedback, I'm telling and you're listening. We're having a conversation. Then you might check for understanding. So what I'm hearing you say is that you didn't think that I handled the market sizing question well, that you thought that my answer sounded defensive, right? You want to check and make sure that what the other person said is the same as what you heard. Once you're pretty sure you're clear on what the feedback was, say thank you, accept it, and go away. You can decide later what you're going to do about it and how you're going to address it. And it may take a while for it to sink in. And then on the flip side, when you're giving feedback, before you give it, make sure the person that you're going to give it to actually wants it. I noticed something in there I'd like to share with you. Is this a good time for us to talk about that? Right? And when you're giving someone feedback, you don't want to, you want to share your observations as opposed to your judgment. Right? So you want to really stay with, this is what I saw, this is what I observed, this is what I noticed. It's up to the person getting the feedback to make the interpretation. You don't want the feedback to come across as, you should be more like this, you should be more like that. You just want to share what you observed and let them learn from it. So if you've got trouble with feedback, practice. Like I think it's great to practice on things that are not very loaded. Ask for feedback on, how your presentation skills were, or how your meeting agenda was, or something that's kind of not very deep and personal. If there's certain people you don't want to get feedback from because they just trigger you, that is totally fine. If there are certain topics that are off the table, that is also totally fine. You should work to expand on it. Like again, back to that whole idea of like expanding the boxes and reducing your blind spot. Like the more feedback you get, the smaller your blind spot's going to get. Some people like to have mantras. Like I know someone who actually repeats in his head before he gets feedback, feedback is growth, feedback is growth, feedback is growth, so that he can kind of like calm himself down so that he can hear what's being said. Whatever is your trick for managing it, just look for what's true, the 10% that's true. And if you don't like the rest, you don't have to take it. The truth is that high-performing entrepreneurs, teams, and cultures are all feedback seekers. So especially if you're leading a teams, the first step is for you to model asking for feedback and then also responding to feedback in a positive and a thankful way. We're going to talk about coaching. So we used to think that this was a coach, right? When we thought of the word coach, we thought about sports. And now we think that this is a coach. Like a coach is Wendy Rhodes in Billions, designed to get the top performance out of the traders. But we're not talking about either of those kind of coaches today. Today, we're talking about growth coaching. So what is coaching exactly? Coaching is focused on questions and focused on the future. It is definitely not therapy, okay? We're not gonna be doing therapy with the people that we work with or even our family members. Therapy is backward looking and helps shed light on problems and patterns and what the causes may have been in the past. It's also not consulting, which is about evaluating problems and recommending solutions. And it's not really mentoring. Mentoring is about, someone who has more experience, sharing their experience, to help someone who's less experienced by sharing wisdom. So coaching is future-focused and question-based. So if you're a manager, you're leading a team at a startup, you definitely need to spend some time over here, but you want to spend as much time as possible over here because that is how you're going to help your team get on a steep growth curve so that the company can grow faster. The more effective your team becomes at solving problems by themselves, as opposed to going to you for the solution, the better you're all going to be. If you're an entrepreneur, you get very used to, when you're a solo entrepreneur, kind of doing everything yourselves and having all the answers. And it's really, really hard to, when you have a team, not to just treat them as an extension of yourself that's going to enable you to be more efficient by taking things off your to-do list and putting it on theirs. That's not going to get the best kind of mileage and results out of your team. And frankly, it's not going to make them feel very happy and fulfilled. So if you can get out of that mindset and have them own their own workflow and their own decision making and empower them by being a coach as opposed to an instructor and a list giver and an order giver, your team's going to be so much more happy. The other thing is we all need to grow. Everyone wants to grow. And research shows that sustainable growth on a personal level has to be internally generated. So if you want to be an effective coach for your team, you have to kind of unlearn that skill of just telling people what to do and, get into a position where you can really lean back and let them find solutions. So coaching is a relationship between any two people, in which the coach supports the coachee to make a meaningful change. It's future-looking, it's aspirational, and most importantly, it is owned and directed by the person who is receiving the coaching. Here's a quick methodology that anyone can use to coach someone else on a specific issue. We're just going to call this spot coaching because this could just be a 10-minute conversation. So who can you coach? Anyone. You can coach your child, you can coach your parent, you can coach your team members, you can coach your employees, you can coach anyone who asks, and exactly 0 people that don't ask you, right? So if the person you want to coach who you think needs coaching doesn't buy into it, non-starter. So what's a coachable issue? So anything for this purpose, sort of anything where personal growth and work kind of intersect. So this could be career development, it could be time management, it could be stress, work relationships, leadership style. It doesn't have to be a big thing to be a coachable issue. A great coachable issue that comes up all the time is I'm constantly late to meetings. What can I do about that? Or I want to get to inbox 0 is a coachable issue. So anything can be the way into a coachable issue. So you can have a coachable conversation in 10 minutes. This could be 7 questions. So a great starting point is what's on your mind. Then I love to ask the question, and what else? Because usually the first thing someone says isn't actually the issue. You can keep digging by saying, what's the real challenge for you? So it's kind of like you're going level deeper and a level deeper and a level deeper. Asking what you want, this might feel obvious, but sometimes by asking this question, you can help people discover what they really want, which they might not even be aware of. So they might be looking at a problem from the outside and not really know where they're even coming from until they hear you ask that question. If you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? This is helping people understand their choices and how they value different things. So you're not telling them what choice to make. You are helping them uncover the unconscious decisions when they're choosing one thing over another. And then the final question is great because you're asking for feedback. When you ask someone what was most useful to you, you're saying, what did I do that helped you? Like, help me be better at doing this in the future. So, we all feel pressure to get stuff done and to have the answer. So it's like really tempting to jump in with advice and solutions or like share your own experience. If you really want to coach someone, don't do that, okay? I've done this so many times. I've made this mistake, right? I'll come in because I'm like, oh yeah, I get that. I've been there, and you want to like share and connect. You'll see the person's eyes, it's like the curtains came down, right? Because now you're not talking about them and helping them do the work. You're sharing about yourself. You'll be just amazed at how much more powerful an experience this is if you can stay out of sharing your own experience and just really lean back instead of leaning forward. Coaching is not just a process like we just went through, it's also just a way of being. There's actually a great book called The Coaching Mindset, which talks about this, and it's about kind of bringing a coaching perspective to everything that you do. So the essence of being a coach starts with presence, right? It all comes back to presence. So like literally just being there fully present and really listening. Then, having an empathic stance. Like, do you hold everyone that you work with and the person that you're speaking with in unconditional positive regard? Are you really listening? Are you listening to either fix, solve, or critique? Emotional engagement, like, is your level of emotional engagement appropriate? Like, if somebody tells you something that is deeply upsetting, you should be connecting with what they're feeling, right? You're not detached, you're engaged. Boundary awareness, so understanding like what is theirs to fix versus yours to fix, right? And really kind of drawing a clear boundary so that you're not solving someone else's problem. And finally, like the courage to challenge. When someone says something that doesn't ring true or where you feel like they're not being honest with themselves, having the courage to call time out and say, that doesn't sound quite right, can be really, really powerful. Sometimes people need that. They need you to challenge them. So if there's one thing to take away from this idea of coaching, it's moving away from fix, tell, solve. And you need to spend some time there, right? We're all trying to move fast, but the more you can stay and ask, listen, reflect, like the better everything is gonna be for you and your team. And when we kind of go up back to the level of sort of overall emotional intelligence, your job as an entrepreneur and as a leader is not to have answers. Your job is to have questions. And your legacy, it might not be creating the next unicorn company. Like for most of us, like that's not gonna happen. But what will definitely happen is that you are going to have an impact on everyone you work with and on everyone around you. And so developing your EQ will help ensure that that impact is a positive one. Thank you.
I just love that segment. So I love to hear if anybody had any reactions to what they saw or heard. I think that one of the things that comes out to me is I think a lot of this applies to being a parent as well. In terms of dealing with kids. The fix and solve thing is something I know I'm very guilty of, because to me it's as plain as the nose on my face. What the hell? Can't you see it? But that isn't necessarily a way to get people to engage. Lisa, what are your thoughts? You had a great definition of emotional intelligence to start off with, so
I was
you
gonna
know.
say it's useful, all that information in any relationship, in romantic relationships, any relationship, because I know it's hard for us to understand each other sometimes. Me as an employer and employees and how they're feeling about different things. and me feeling like things just need to get done the way I say do it, and just seeing things from their perspective, and I try to do that. I'm an empath, so I have an empathy for everyone, and I try to see things from other people's perspective. But sometimes when you get caught up in, I need this from you, and this is what I'm paying you to do, it's hard. So as far as feedback, I do ask for feedback, but a lot of times I don't accept it, because if I feel like this is the way something should be done and this is what I want and this was my plan and everything, then that's just what I have in my mind, and I'm just fixed on it. So that's some things I need to work on, taking feedback a little bit better in certain situations.
It's great that you have the courage to share that. I love that. But anyone else want to jump in? Thank you for that, Lisa. Tia?
Yes,
Tia's reaching for the switch. Go, girl, go.
I really enjoyed this segment, and I like what you mentioned, how it can be helpful even to work kids. I have a dance team that I lead, and it's funny because I have to have an important conversation with them on Wednesday, and they just turned 18, so they're fairly young, and we danced on Sunday, and up until that point, it was a lot going on leading to that particular dance, and I have to have a conversation based upon just how everything went, just getting their feedback. I made a mistake, I believe, by asking directly after the dance. I could tell that they were somewhat down. And I said, well, how do you feel about it? And I think that a part of emotional intelligence is just being aware of when to have a particular conversation. So just listening to being self-aware, being aware of yourself, but then also aware of other people, and aware of the timing as well. Is this time to have this particular conversation? Sometimes I know that we talked about, or the video discussed, are you on red? Are you yellow? Are you green?
Oh, I love that part. Yeah.
Yes, that's really important. But what happens when you don't have that timing to ask, are you on red right now? Are you yellow? So it's kind of also feeding off of what their mood is. If you know that something is off, maybe wait to have the conversation and get to a place where you can ask, hey, is this a good time to talk? Or how are you feeling right now? So it was just helping me to be mindful of the timing of things. Sometimes when something is off, or I want to address something, or something is really well, I want to just have the conversation right away. And that's not necessarily the answer. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that's really good, Tia. Thank you. I think it goes to the whole idea of setting, right? You have to have the right setting to communicate, and I don't mean it has to be a formal type of thing, but like Tia was just sharing, there are some settings that it's just now is not the time, and it might be the time 10 minutes from now, right? It's something. One of the things this woman said in her presentation is read the room. Read the room. What's the room about? What's kind of happening? And you can see it. And some people get so caught up in their game plan that they don't read the room. They in fact, they bulldoze the room, which is certainly my tendency when I was younger. Is just, you dumb bastards, here's what we're gonna do, and you just kind of force it. And all of us have had experience probably with bosses or teachers or even parents who are just, not necessarily mean, but they used fear and intimidation to get you to do what they wanted you to do. And I always, most people have experience with that kind of leader. It's a very common, it's the lowest form of leadership in my opinion, but the reason it exists is because it does work in some cases. It does cause action that is perceived as good from the leader's perspective. But this is kind of going up that food chain, if you will, from from a kind of a low acuity or basic type of thing to more skillful and more aware. And it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're permissive. It doesn't mean that you're, not tough. And I think that's one of the messages that you get from this presentation is if you're making a decision on 5% of the reality or 5% of the fact, the likelihood of you being totally right is almost zero. And that's true in many ways. So you have to gather information in a way to help you be more effective, whether it's interpersonally or in other areas, sales and so forth. So, well, I'm glad that everyone liked that. I watch this video quite often myself. I find it to be incredibly helpful. I think it's all part of this learning critical thinking, right? How do I get to where I want to go? What tools do I need to have, or what process do I need to have? And one of the things that she does a really good job at is pointing out that we all have unconscious things that we may not know about, or we may not be super aware of. And those things come into play, right? They, whether it's biases, whether it's fear, insecurity, whatever. So this process allows you to be open to seeing that stuff and to becoming aware of it, and not in a destructive, oh, you're a piece of crap type of thing. It's much more, okay, I didn't really understand that about me, but I think it's absolutely true. I mean, this has happened. I have the same thing happen over and over again, and I don't understand why. It's always the other person's fault. I'm perfect. What the hell? So I think that this type of thinking and this kind of approach is just it's a growth opportunity for all of us to kind of go. No one's going to make it to the finish line perfect. I'm not saying that, but you certainly can build awareness, and you can certainly have some. I hate to use the word skills. It sounds so transactional, but they really are skills and abilities to get along. I was taught, this one small example, I was taught a long time ago when I was in sales. And she mentioned it. She said, rarely is the first thing that someone says, is that what they really mean? So I was taught to ask the question, in addition to you feeling like this product is too expensive, is there anything else in the back of your mind that you're thinking about? And I cannot tell you how many times people would just lay out the real truth just with that one question. It was really eye-opening to me, because I never would have thought about that without being taught that. So there's a lot to learn about human relationships, and particularly if you're an entrepreneur or leader, or you're somebody who's trying to get somewhere and you got people helping you, this will help you be more effective. And there's worksheets in there, like I mentioned. There's all kinds of stuff there that can help with this. But this, to me, is one of the most valuable pieces in this course, in my opinion. So, well, thank you all very much for coming today. And I do want to point out, we are not going to have class on Thursday. I was just invited to be the guest of the Secretary of Agriculture, who's coming to Raleigh on Thursday. And our organization got a USDA grant at one time. So they're bringing some of the people who got grants from the USDA to meet him and to talk. And there's some kind of panel or something. I don't know. So somehow I got invited to go. Don't ask me why, but probably everyone else is busy. But I do have to go do that in Raleigh, so I'm gonna have to cancel for Thursday. But that's about it for here. So any other thoughts or questions from anybody? Okay, well, thank you all very much, and we'll